It'll let me record. I am now recording. I'm gonna make you the host again. Lori is the host now.
All right, are we ready?
There you go. Now we're ready.
Okay, sounds good. So this is the case study on giving feedback. The basic introduction of this case is that there's a supervisor, Jasmine, who supervises 11 customer service specialists. She has asked a consultant to help her grow and develop as a leader. That's what she's asked to do. So it kind of goes awry from there, but that was her initial request, is that she wants to grow and develop as a leader. The consultant has decided to conduct anonymous interviews with all the employees and then to give her feedback. And we thought maybe this was the gotcha. There was a gotcha on a previous case study. Is this the gotcha? The consultant has decided to do this, and then the rest of the case study basically is how then he'll decide to present that feedback to her. Well, that's just one small part of what she's asked for. She's asked to grow and develop as a leader. So we thought that was interesting. So going forward, the purpose of the case study is to conduct a feedback meeting between the consultant and the supervisor, Jasmine, and how to do that. So we're presented with the responses by the 11 employees, and a lot of it's negative. So the known parameters for the case study are: from the initial meeting, the consultant thinks Jasmine will be sensitive to negative feedback. Let me get a little coffee. And that she might get defensive. The feedback is predominantly negative, so we know that framing is imperative. So a big part of this is, how do you present feedback, especially if the feedback is negative? What we have done is we've searched outside, we've searched the literature, we've done some reading, we've looked at how consultants present feedback, how consultants conduct meetings like this. There's some opposing opinions on sandwiching. You read a lot about start with the positive, then go through some stuff, and then end with the positive. The consultant doesn't present the information in that way. But there are some people that feel like that is sugarcoating. It can be done in a genuine and honest way, but you got to make sure that it is genuine, and you're not just throwing some compliments at the beginning and the end and saying the real stuff in the middle. It's especially important to know how to do this framing when you know to begin with that the person appears that they're not going to want to accept what's going on there. Example from the case study, one of the things that the consultant does is categorizes the negative feedback and make some assumptions. So when you look at these bullets, here's a couple of comments from the employees. She's very childish. I don't appreciate being made fun of in front of my peers. Another comment is she has a biting sense of humor that sometimes turns other people off. Where the consultant made a heading that said, Jasmine's use of humor and sarcasm hurts team members' feelings. Well, that's an assumption. No one said my feelings are hurt, but the consultant said hurts team members' feelings from those comments. So we think it's important for the consultant to be aware of that and not read into comments and then make assumptions that could have a negative effect. So assumption of team members' feelings is there. We need to coach on the appropriate and effective use of humor in the workplace and use the feedback as learning and guided practice. I thought this was interesting, looking through some of the articles and research as we were doing this, that there was a study done by Harvard. It was Harvard research. They found that, and it was like 5.9 something, but they rounded it up to 6 in the article. It said the most effective teams have a feedback ratio of 6-to-1, positive to negative. And they also had the ratio of the least effective teams, what that ratio was. And they did this with 60 strategic leadership teams using 360-degree feedback. So it was really fascinating. I think that the takeaway is, when it's all said and done, what is the motivation for Jasmine and the employees, looking at how things are being done in the organization. Because the goal is to continuously build a team and looking at what are they doing well? Was that something that was asked, or was it what is not happening because, or what don't you like? But what's being done that builds strength in that team. So the importance of the negative feedback with this ratio. In the article, it mentioned John Gottman, and I thought this was a neat kind of side note that he found a similar ratio with happy marriages. He said that the happy, long-lasting marriages, when you're in daily communication with a person, and it was like 5.2 something something. So is a similar ratio of you need to hear more positives than negatives. So they mentioned that in that article as well. So when we're looking at what the consultant is going to present to Jasmine, he's going to present all of these negatives. Did he ask what the team members liked and what was going on well? So we've got Bruce going next.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Lori. So in order to provide feedback, we made a checklist for a meeting, and basically prior to the meeting, we want to look at the purpose of the meeting, why we meeting, make sure we have all the relevant information prior to this meeting, and then keep an open mind. Just don't go in with assumptions, as Lori said earlier, and then also ensure that we have a neutral environment. I think we had a case study before where the consultant provided feedback and he met off-site. So make sure there's kind of a neutral environment between the consultant and Jasmine. During the meeting, when asked for some suggestions, observations, and some feedback, we could maybe suggest that we do a self-assessment using the 360-degree, I think it's STIR self survey. Share some suggestions, observations, and use a method that's called the STAR technique, where we have a situation, we be real specific about a situation, we talk about the task, and then talk about the actions behind it, and then look at some results, and then also provide some balanced feedback, kind of similar to the sandwich method, where we commend, we recommend, and then commend again. Also, provide some difficult feedback is another way in that balanced method technique. Be prepared for some emotional reaction, and we have to remain calm and be professional, and then remind individuals that we could take a break at any time. Focus on the options for doing things differently, and then some solutions to some of the issues. Also want to look at whether or not the person is understanding. Summarize and kind of get feedback. Do you understand, or do you agree with the actions that we've made? And then make it clear on how and when we need to follow up. Let's look at the performance and not personality traits, and then determine whether or not there's some additional training or development as needed, and then ask how can we move forward. And then after the meeting, we kind of just, again, summarize our feedback. We look at creating an action plan. We begin to follow up based on the timeline, and then we request feedback.
And this is an overview, again, using the STAR method of for the consultant, like as they prepare, and also can be used as a tool to guide the meeting. And this is just a graphic that gives, on the left side, gives the consultant some ideas to lead the conversation. And then on the right, you have the hopeful outcomes. So when you make statements that describe the behavior without judgment, exaggeration, or labeling, and you say what or who it impacts and what the impact is, pause for discussion to let the other person, in this case would be Jasmine, respond. I would like to, or because, and this sets the stage for you being able to begin to create an action plan with Jasmine. And then what do you think allows her to be able to provide you feedback and put input and give input on the next, on the action plan. And then this is another graphic pretty similar to what we just went through. And I think the important piece here is the end, making sure that you have goals set. You've got a timeline for when you're gonna follow up. You've given Jasmine the opportunity to respond and provide feedback. And I think this is an important piece from the standpoint of you're dealing with someone, or you believe that you're dealing with someone that has the possible for an emotional response to the feedback that you're going to be discussing. And then the other person to this is Jasmine. And so there's some ideas here in terms of being able to receive feedback. So stage one would be react. So the person that is receiving feedback needs to be aware of and manage their emotions. And you also need to concentrate on listening to the feedback and ask any questions to ensure you actually understand what is being presented to you. You must remember not to skip the next stage, which, depending on the feedback, is we might need to end the discussion at this point to give the person receiving the feedback an opportunity to think about it and make sure they're properly understanding what's being conveyed. And then stage two, the person receiving feedback needs to have time to reflect and be honest about themselves and their performance. Keep an open mind about what's being said. They should allow themselves extra time for the emotions and have time to calm down if necessary. Come back to the person that's giving you feedback with specific examples. You know, what would you have me do instead? How can I do it differently next time? And then stage three is the opportunity for the person receiving feedback to respond. Accept the feedback by thanking the person giving it. If you don't agree, do it respectfully, and then maybe also offer alternative facts or views. You should focus on the future and improvement, suggest options and solutions, and then you and the person that's giving the feedback have the opportunity to negotiate what those next steps would be or what your action plan is going to be moving forward. And you need to ensure that you understand what the next steps are and that you're committed to implementing that.
Okay, so here we started kind of reflecting or maybe getting a plan in place of what we thought we may do. But we started asking, do we have enough data? So there were 11 team members that they interviewed, but we only have 2 or 3 quotes under each theme, and there were 3 or 4 themes. So where is all that other information? And is that the only information that we need? So like I said, we're only seeing the comments the consultant has grouped together. Is it advisable to group the data or just let each comment speak for itself? We also thought maybe a brief survey would be useful along with the interview to rate maybe Jasmine's leadership styles, her communication, those kind of things. And we also felt it would be wise to have Jasmine do a self-reflection to determine what she thinks her strengths are as a leader. So we just felt like here we didn't have enough data to really help Jasmine. All right, so back to our question at the introduction that Lori had. Was Jasmine's goal of becoming a better leader accomplished through this method of employee interviews? And we say, no, it wasn't. We feel like there needs to be more. So a structured leadership training program, maybe from additional data that we collect, then she can go through her leadership program. We felt like she maybe needs some coaching to understand her impact on her employees and the effectiveness of her team. And then coaching on really the specific things that came from that feedback, and not just the interviews, but other things that we would have done with her employees. We wanted to look at a more holistic approach. So we've learned a lot during our time in this program that it's not just, you can't just look at one thing. You have to look at a lot of things. So the mission and vision of whatever organization she's a part of, we just know it's involved in customer service. So meeting the mission and vision as her as a leader, and then her as her employees. Outcomes, are they meeting outcomes? Their sales, so they're in some kind of sale because they have customer service. So are they meeting those goals? We think that looking at customer satisfaction would be important, especially looking at employee satisfaction. So maybe they need to do a survey, employee satisfaction survey, and we can use that data then to give that feedback to Jasmine on her leadership, and then talking to those major stakeholders as well. So as a leader, when we're getting feedback, you have to be prepared to hear the good and the bad. We know that. And then being in a leadership role does not make you perfect. And I found this feedback is wisdom. So we need to take what we have and use it. So gain that knowledge and then share that knowledge with others.
Then Dr. Lamb, as we're at this point in this case, which had not a whole lot of text and information presented in it, and where we are in our program overall, not just in this class, it felt like a good place for us to look at it from a consultant role and what the consultant would encounter in this case. So we need to remember that consultants are in a position to have some influence over an individual, a group, or an organization, but they don't have direct power to make changes or implement programs. And a successful consultant's got to have a combination of technical skills, interpersonal skills, and consulting skills to be successful. And when I say that, the technical is the subject matter expert content. The interpersonal is the ability to put ideas into words, and to listen and to form relationships with the clients. And the consulting part, the skills and the phases of being a consultant as that role. And then I had also encountered in the last case study we had some of the essential readings. One of them was a reference to Flawless Consulting from Peter Block. And in that, he points out there are 5 phases of successful consulting. And the first one being entry into and contracting, actually the first meeting and exploring the problem, which is part of what we would have going on in this case because we just don't have a whole lot of information. Secondly, the discovery and dialogue, the consultant gets a sense of the problem and the strengths that the client has. And of course, that would be a major phase that we would, as has been explained earlier by other team members today, that's something we certainly would want to delve into deeper. And number 3, an analysis and decision to act to provide a manageable amount of data, expect pushback, setting goals, and selecting the best course of action. And that one particularly because in this case, we did deal with a lot of negativity from what we were presented, and we would expect to have pushback occurring. 4th and 5th steps, according to Peter Block, engagement and implementation, the plan execution, and 5th, extension, recycle, or termination, a relationship with clients. And then due to the lateral relationship, not direct, the consultant can expect pushback and should be expected from Jasmine in this case, especially after giving negative feedback and encountering problems. Consultants need not to take things personally, and that is really a key in this case because we weren't really presented anything except for negativity. And as a consultant, we should certainly expect to have pushback coming from Jasmine and other members of the business that we would consult with, but we don't need to take those things personally as consultants. The resistance that consultants encounter during the process is resistance to the prospect of having to act on difficult organizational issues within the business. And consultants operate on 2 levels. They operate on a first one focusing on content with the cognitive part of the discussion between the consultant and the client, and another focuses on the relationship with both the consultant and the client generating and sensing feelings about each other. That would be acceptance or resistance, high or low tension in the relationship, and support or confrontation occurring in the relationship. Consultants need not to forget that a major objective of every consultation is to encourage or focus on and value the effective or interpersonal aspects of relationships with the client. In this case, it'd be important that the consultant focus on building a strong and trusting relationship with Jasmine. And then consultants need to be held accountable for their performance with clients. It's normal to encounter problems in consulting and to find a resistance. It's the responsibility of consultants to work to overcome those issues and to resolve the problems in the best way possible. And then we just ended with our references.
Okay. Excellent work. Anybody have anything else to add before I get started? Nope. All right. So let's talk the technical side, the consultant side, and then we're going to talk the leadership side, which is where we start with Royce. So the technical side. Lori spoke about not having enough data and the data being grouped, it is best practice when you're doing qualitative work, open-ended questions. It is best practice not to define your themes up front. The theme should emerge from the feedback or the data that you've collected, which is the response to qualitative work. So Dr. Hamilton and I are doing a School of Ed graduate school case study. We've been working on it for over a year. Dr. Hamilton, of course, is the qualitative person, and I'm the quantitative person. The qualitative piece, we're using the program that I'm program coordinator for because we have a large population. And we're using it, and we started with an open-ended final reflection of the program. And it's not a fishing for compliment type survey. It only asks the completer to focus on themselves. And we asked 7 open-ended questions. Now, I spent the first 2 semesters, or the better part of a year, validating the instrument, and we rolled it out to start collection in fall of 18, and we'll collect again this year. We'll collect 3 years cycle of data, and we're going to track what students feel like, how they've grown, what they've gotten, and juxtapose that down the road 3 years to once they're in the job for 3 years, did they really get what they needed? It's about value added. It's about delivery. And where they are now at the end of the program may be different 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road once they're in the position. But the point is, those 7 questions, and what I did for validity and reliability, and I had to adjust some of them, was we had to be careful not to phrase the questions in certain ways so that we always got the same answers, or that we were looking for particular answers by leading them with the questions. We had to find a way to ask the questions in a way that students gave us, or candidates gave us, what they wanted, not what we wanted. And when you set up your categories, I'm looking for answers, or responses in this category, that category, the other. That leads your questions, and you pretty much find what you want that way, rather than what's really there. And that's one of the things in this case study. They had asked some open-ended questions, and they sorted them into themes after the responses came back. That is the proper technique. Don't have your themes up front, because then you'll find what you were looking for rather than what's there. You have to be. I know that sounds like I'm making a fight, but I'm telling you, in qualitative work, this is the heart of qualitative work. Again, Dr. Hamilton is the expert. He's a phenomenologist. But I've worked in qualitative and done enough work on my own to know that that's where you can find. That's where you can put your thumb on the scale. Excuse me. That's where you can find what you want by asking leading questions, or categorizing the questions, or having the categories of responses that you want before you even ask the question. You need to ask open-ended questions and find what you find. And then you group them into common themes. So that's a technique issue. And it appears that was done correctly, but I always get a question on that. Jess is right that we need more information. The 2 pieces of information that I would have liked to have up front would have been is how her unit is performing, quantitative data on how the unit is performing. She's the head of 11-member customer service department, number 1. And number 2, I would like to see, again, quantitative, I would like to see her job performance appraisal. Why do most people call you? In the real world, if you were a consultant and you got a call from Jasmine, why do you think Jasmine would have called you?
Because she's got some problems within her team.
There you go. People that things are going well, they don't call you when things are going well. So one or two things are one or the other, or both things have gone bad. Her division's job performance is not up to the standard needed by the organization, or her performance appraisal is not up to the standard needed for her to maintain her job. That goes back again, mission, vision, those things. What are we there for? But we need some hard data. We need some quantitative to go along with this qualitative and see if they match. My suspicion is they'll match, or she wouldn't have called you. That the qualitative data says she's a train wreck in this role. My suspicion is one or both of the quantitative pieces that you need to tell you the same thing. Otherwise, she wouldn't have called you. So you're right. We need some quantitative to put the qualitative in perspective. Now, the qualitative is bad. We know that sarcasm is not humor. Sarcasm is passive-aggressive behavior. So my question to you is Lori said 6 to 1. We got to say 6 positive things for every 1 negative. Where do we find 6 positive things to say? Did you see anything positive?
She had a few positive things, but they were the mostly negative.
I didn't see anything that I considered positive. But let me go back and look. Maybe I missed something.
I wonder what they were asking. So were you asking questions on what's going well? What do you like about your job? What works well with your team? Or do they feel like, oh, here's a consultant. It's our opportunity to say everything we're mad about.
Yeah. Again, that's what I was talking about. You got to make sure that on the qualitative end that you ask absolutely open-ended, and you don't lead people into the answers that you want. That's called fishing for compliments. You find what's there. Now, let me reclaim host here. Again, I'm not seeing. I don't see anything positive in any of these statements. I never get a response from her. She's canceled my meetings. She's never around. I like how she always gives us notes of what's happening from corporate and asks for our input. I don't know that that's a positive. I was glad she asked for volunteers to participate on the system redesign rather than making a decision on her own. Both of those appear to me to be lack of leadership. Asking for volunteers, that's kind of like in my line of work, one of the biggest mistakes that beginning school administrators make is they put a sign-up sheet in the mailroom to cover ball games. What? You're legally responsible for what goes on there. You can't just hope somebody's going to come to a Friday night ball game. That's not the time to be democratic. That's part of your job. The state law says that you're to assign those duties to teachers, not let them decide if they want. What if everybody decides not to come? What are you going to do then? Be standing there by yourself? Those two things are like, both of those show an absence of leadership. Neither one of those is a positive. Could be argued into, she gives us notice about what that might be a neutral, but I consider that to be a positive as well. I mean, the negative as well. So I don't really see anything positive here to say to her. Therein lies one of your problems. That's kind of the trick of this case study is, what do you do when there is nothing to say positive. We know that we're supposed to start with the positive, then slip the bad stuff in the middle, and then end on a positive note. The trick of this case study is there is no positive note. What do you do now, hero? What do you do when you walk into a place? Obviously, it's not going well, or she wouldn't have called you. The feedback is this negative in context of the mission vision. What do I mean it couldn't be worse in context of the mission vision? What do these people do for a living? What's the job here?
Customer service.
Customer service. Could you have invented a less likely person to work in customer service than Jasmine? That's kind of the point of, as I said, of this case study that was supposed to ring a bell with you. This person does customer service. What you've read about this person should lead you to find that this person should never be anywhere near customer service. If that's your mission vision is customer service, this person shouldn't be anywhere near customer service. There's nothing positive. There's nothing that would lead you to believe that this is her vocation, that this is what she does for a living. If you didn't know, that'd be your last guess of 1,000,000 is customer service. So that means there is nothing positive to say. You're exactly right. You found the right tact to take with this one. Giving feedback has got to be 6-to-1. I think it's actually should be 3-to-1, but I'm a little more direct than most people. I think it ought to be 2 or 3-to-1, but I can't find the 2 or 3. I can't find the 1. That's the hook in this one. There's always a catch in every one of these. That's the catch. There's nothing positive to tell this lady. So what do you do? What do you do when there's no positive to tell?
I think you just tell it like it is.
That's exactly right. You tell it like it is. But what you do, y'all found the answer. The answer is you tell the person, this qualitative feedback is not positive. I can't find anything in this to highlight. I'm going to need to do some quantitative work with survey to give me, this is an incomplete picture. That's what you have to say. That's what you have. Don't make stuff up that's not there. I mean, for some reason we have to fight this notion in any kind of research to report things that aren't there. That's a type 1 error, right? Where we say that there is something there and there isn't. This is an example of that. We can't say there's something positive here because show me on this on the data on the screen something that's positive. There is nothing positive here. And so that's what you have to say to the person. So you don't dwell on this stuff. You just say to her, I reviewed the responses, feedback. I don't think it's a good starting point. I don't see anything that gives us an opportunity to start. I'm going to need to collect some quantitative data. As Jess said, I'm going to need to do some survey work. And you're going to need to do a job satisfaction survey. There's plenty of them out there that have been validated. But we're also going to have to keep an eye on Hertzberg. All roads lead back to Hertzberg. Hertzberg's theory of motivation, satisfiers and dissatisfiers. Kind of the best that we can hope for is that we find that Jasmine's not a dissatisfier. She can't really be a satisfier in their job satisfaction. That has more to do with actually being, dealing with customers and customer service. But we can determine if Jasmine is a dissatisfier or not through that work, that job satisfaction work. But there's a lot of other things that we could do. You said, but Jasmine only wants to look at her behavior. Yes, but we've got to look at her behavior in context to the organization. So you're right. We've got to do some more. There is no positive here. Can't highlight that. So we just have to tell the truth and say we're going to have to collect some quantitative data. That's what we're going to have to do. On the action plan, you're exactly right. You're going to have to do an action plan, and you are going to have to be the person, since she hired you directly, who supervises that action plan. So you need to know up front that this is not a hit and run, that you can come in, leave the plan, and disengage. Since you were not hired by her employer to develop an action plan, that portends that you, as the consultant, has to build a long-term relationship, because you have to do the follow-up on the action plan. Make sure you know that when you accept the role in one like this, where it's not one of those things where the company hires you to come in, you develop the plan, and you walk away. And we talked about this in earlier case studies. You have to know up front who's going to take the handoff, or if there's going to be a handoff. So the question is, does that have implications for the plan that you write? If you know you're going to have to be the one who, in a formative way,
Dr. Lamb,
implements the plan.
So Dr. Lamb,
yes.
I have a question. So at what point should the consultant deal with employees, or should the consultant only deal with Jasmine, other than interviewing the employees?
That's my point. Is I think you're going to have to go to them right away with the survey. I mean,
well, if it's a performance with the employees, should the consultant engage in trying to correct that performance as well?
Well, we got to do. I think that's part of the action plan. That's kind of what I'm saying, Bruce, and I guess that's what your question is. If we know up front that Jasmine hired us, then yeah, we're going to have to be the one who follows up with her relationships and works with her on how she interacts with her employee. That's a different job than just making the plan. I mean, this is one of those things. Are you willing? This is a decision you have to make up front. When you walk into a situation like this, you walking in knowing that you're the one who's going to have to do all the follow-up work with her. Do you really want, once you've seen this data, do you really want to do that? Is this something that you really want to get into? Do you want to take work from individuals like this? To me, the ethical thing to do is know up front when a person calls you and says, I need your help, whether you offer that kind of help or not, or do you just work from the corporate end, so that if they want you to do it, that's a different contract. See, when you go and meet with Jasmine, the implied contract is you'll work with her to fix the problems, and you got to understand that up front. This is not a handoff situation where you develop this, collect all the data, analyze it, develop a plan, then hand it to somebody to implement. That's not going to happen in this case. You can't just hand Jasmine a plan and expect her to implement it with fidelity and everything to go well. Somebody's going to have to be there to implement and assess how she's doing, to do formative assessment. So if you're going to do individual work like this, you got to know up front what all that it portends. So Bruce, is that an answer to your question? Okay. All right. So that's the trick on this one. There is no 6. There is no 3. There is no 2. There is no 1 positive. But you've got to just say that. And so that leads you into, I've got to do some quantitative work. Quantitative work is going to be under the conceptual framework of Hertzberg, looking at job satisfaction. Is Jasmine a dissatisfier? So you're going to need to find a job satisfaction survey that has a section in it for their immediate supervisor, You know, in my line of work, and we have the North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey. It has 12 sections. One of the sections is on the principal. It's on school leadership. It's just one of the 12, but it does understand, it does index, it does reference that job dissatisfaction can be due to school leadership. And so there is a section with 12 questions on school leadership in that job satisfaction. And so my point is make sure that when you're doing that quantitative work and you're going to survey them, make sure you have a section on the leader. Because although they can't be a satisfier, according to Hertzberg, they can be a dissatisfier. That's important to know. So now we're kind of putting it all together, which leads us into, as I said, we'll begin to shift with this case study into Royce. Royce is about program evaluation. Royce is about putting it all together. Your qualitative, your quantitative, your anecdotal, the things you've seen, things you've heard, your back to super crunchers, your years of experience as an expert in the field. You have to learn how to recognize your own biases. You have to learn how to look at each of those things and treat them in an ethical manner. What does Ayers and super crunchers say about getting it right? Who wins, the data people or the experienced people? On a regular basis, who wins?
Data.
The data people. Can't outrun your numbers, folks. Data always wins. We have all these people like me who supposedly they hire for their years of experience and pontification. But so you hired me to make these decisions, or you hired me to do this, that, and the other. But unfortunately, the data beats me every time. Because it's not important what I think we ought to be doing going forward. The data tells us what we need to do as an organization or as potential employees in the organization, what students need and what they should be getting. What I think they should be getting is not as important as what the data says that they need in terms of job performance. So all those things kind of had to be put together. Now, so if you were the leader of this organization, would you invest money in Jasmine? Hold 1 second. I'm in class. I thought that might have been. Would you invest money in Jasmine? Everybody's muted. Unmute yourself and tell me.
I don't know. I think we need more information to make that decision, but from what is presented, probably not.
Or at least not in that role.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, just hit the nail on the head. Jasmine might be a valuable employee. She might be somebody that we want on the bus. Clearly, we've got her in the wrong seat. No amount of work is going to make her appropriate, in my opinion, for customer service. She does not have the temperament for customer service. No amount of training is going to change that. She does not have the temperament for customer service. One of the things I told you, I managed 23 adjuncts that teach for me at any one time. And what I've had to try to do is find the ones who they all have the content knowledge. They all have the credential skills, abilities. They all have terminal degrees. Some have better dispositional skills in terms of customer service. I've tried over the last few years to shift our focus to customer service. There's a lot of places that offer you what we do and have people who know what to do. But the notion here is we're a customer service business. And I've got to find people whose natural inclination, their skills, ability, their dispositional behaviors are those that that lend themselves to customer service. That's not easy. That's not as easy to find as you think it is. And one of the things, it doesn't matter how many rules or policies or I put into place. Some people just can't do customer service. I've got one right now that you know, we're going to have to find her a different role. She's just not good with customer service. And that doesn't mean she doesn't have a role in our organization, and she doesn't have skill and ability and professional credentials and those things. She's just not good at customer service. I don't know that I can. I know that we can do a lot of things because we have knowledge, and knowledge is power. But I don't know that we can that we can make people likable. You know, that's kind of the common theme with Jasmine here is that she's not a likable person. And to try to fit a square peg in a round hole organizationally, I think you're wasting your time. You know, one of the things that employers always look for is dispositional behaviors. You know, I tell our folks when they're going out looking for a job, when they're asked that trick question about, tell us about your strengths and weaknesses, your strengths always need to be dispositional. I'm on time, I'm honest, I'm ethical, I work and play well with others, all of those things. I'm a fully formed adult. That's not going to change. My weaknesses are my inexperience, but I'm going to learn quickly. I'll go and get trained. People can work with you if it's just a skills building issue. But people can't work with you in a customer service business. And the school business is, you know, K-12 and post-secondary, it is a customer service business. You know, very few people corner the market. I mean, every program that all of you are involved in your particular colleges, every one of you have somebody that, you know, fairly close by you that offers that same thing. You don't have it's not a patent situation or a copyright or exclusivity. You don't have that. There are other nursing programs nearby. There's other engineering programs in other community colleges. There's other community colleges for David and Laura. There's places nearby. Jade's line of work, a little more specialized, but there are other people who offer the same thing. And so when people ask me what I do, I have one or two responses. If it's a good day, I tell them customer service. If it's a bad day, I tell them I'm the custodian. That's kind of, you know, what I do. The two things that I do most is customer service and clean up a mess that somebody else made. That's the two things that I spend my time doing. But I try to never lose the focus on that. What we really do, what we really provide is customer service. It's in context of our discipline, but it's also customer service oriented. So somebody who's in a customer service line with these dispositional behaviors, if I'm the organizationalist here, if I'm a leader in the organization, I would find something else in the organization for Jasmine to do. I would not, I would not be tilting windmills here. I mean, there's a point of diminishing returns. I'm using all these metaphors here, but you know what I mean. You know, you're not going to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, chicken salad out of chicken manure. I mean, whatever you want to do it. And so, from a organizational perspective, this is one of those things that you could spend a lot of time and energy, pain, and you could expend a lot of political capital here over something that you don't have to. You need to make a better decision. So as we move into Royce, the whole idea of Royce is it comes at the end. Everything that you've learned through the Salkind book on statistics, on quantitative, the Merriam book on qualitative, looking at super crunching, doing big data sets, keeping up with Ayers, keeping up with the quants, with Davenport. All those things should lead us to Royce. How do we put it all together now? You hear me rant and rave all the time in terms of being just basically a lunatic over Gardner-Webb's finances. And chapter 1 in Royce should tell you why. What's the first thing when you're doing a program evaluation, especially when things aren't going well? What's the first thing you've got to look at as the leader? What's number 1 in that list of things in chapter 1 of Royce? When you're looking to do an evaluation of a program or an organization, what's the first thing you look at? Staffing. It's not Dale's opinion. That's from the authority. That's from the Bible on program evaluation. Is you have to start with staffing, not personnel. Now, what this morning we've been talking about is personnel with Jasmine, about her behaviors. Staffing is about how many people you got, and finding the optimum number of those for the revenue stream and the job requirements that you have. Because all your problems generally stem from an imbalance in staffing. If you can't address that, if you can't fix that, you're not going to be able to fix much else in your organization. That's the first thing that has to be addressed. There is a list, there is a litany, there is a starting point. It's tried and true, research based. It's not based on somebody's opinion. We start all program evaluations with staffing. Do we have the right number of people to meet our mission and vision in context of the money that we're bringing in and what's going out? Where are we with staffing? Are we understaffed? Are we overstaffed? Or is it just, is it just right, Goldilocks? And so the reason why I get so critical about Gardner-Webb is I'm obviously emotionally involved and wanting to do well. I'm a big supporter of Christian education. But I know that all the things that they're doing, kind of nibbling around the edges, none of it is going to be effective until they start where they're supposed to start, with staffing. It's not optional. I mean, we start all program evaluations with staffing. And then once we get that figured out, then we can begin to develop plans and processes, more importantly, processes, once we have the right number of people in place. What a lot of organizations find, and I'll kind of wrap up this morning, I see my time's about up. Quite surprisingly to the organization themselves, when organizations streamline and reduce and get the right number of staff, they find that things actually get quicker and more efficient, because a lot of times processes get streamlined, but the only reason that person was involved was for them to justify them having a job. Did we really need for it to go through that many people? Part of our problem, I want to do a new program track for masters at Gardner-Webb. It starts with the basis of, it's basically an organizational leadership masters and a couple more program tracks coming out of executive leadership masters, which I'm in charge of. Would be 3 new program tracks for a total of 4. It would use existing courses. Would be nothing new. Use all existing courses in the catalog. Would only be a 1 course change on one of the tracks. The others, the courses are already there. And I've been told it'll take, the process will take 20 months to get a decision before I can go forward. And the best way, so I've kind of researched what that 20-month process is. And the best that I can figure out, the reason why it takes 20 months is we have several different desks that it has to cross just to justify them having a desk for it to cross. If we got rid of them and their desk, the process would not change. It would just streamline, and we could probably do it in 6 months rather than 20. So what you find is when you're overstaffed, rather than becoming more efficient, you become less efficient. There's too many people that everything's got to go by. So the notion that we'll let people go and get more efficient, there's a reason why that can happen, and normally does. Because you take an irrational bureaucracy and make it into a rational bureaucracy. You have fewer hands and desks for it to go through or to cross. You get more efficient. So begin looking at Royce. Your case studies, again, I want us on Saturday, we're going to talk about case studies, the efficacy of case studies in terms of for virtual collaboration, what we could do to make them better, the content that they transmitted. Is there too much gotcha involved? Do you spend too much time trying to figure out what the catch is? But part of the reason why I have you do that, most of the time when you go out in the consultant's role, there's a catch out there. You just got to be smart enough to recognize that. If it was easy, they'd have just done it themselves. They wouldn't have called you if it was easy. And that's part of the reason why there is a catch, there is a hook in each of these case studies, is because nobody calls you when it's easy and the answer is apparent. Nobody calls you when it's going well. And that's part of the learning in these case studies is it's not going to be easy. There's going to be a catch. There's going to be a workaround that you're going to have to figure out, like in this one, is there is no positive feedback to give her. All right. So everybody's up to speed where we are with what you did an excellent job today. You hit all the tricks today. You found them all. Did a very good job. Questions you have for me before we go? As always, thanks for playing along. I'll see you in 2 weeks on the first floor in Craig. I'll be set up in whatever room. It'll either be 107 or the room directly across the hall. I think they're calling that the Spark now. That's the acronym. You can't make this stuff up. I'll see you in 107 or the Spark in 2 weeks. Y'all stay safe during the storms today and tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bob.